Hi guys! In today's video we'll be working on this Jack Frost inspired doll. Despite being requested for a few years actually, I've never attempted to make this character before because male dolls has always been harder for me to get my hands on, but now I finally had one that I thought could work, so I gave it a go. I had to adjust some of the features to fit the doll I was working on, but I hope you guys enjoy my take on the character. So for this project we'll be working on this Monster High doll, which I got secondhand in the bundle, and it's actually the first male Monster High doll that I've ever had. Firstly, we need to remove his snake gorgon hair, since obviously it doesn't fit the character, and I did this by squishing the head until I could get at the glue and finally pull it all off, kind of like a helmet. Then use acetone to remove the face. When I removed the face, I realized he had some pretty bad staining on his cheeks, probably from a highlighter or something, which did affect how I had to do the repaint later. The face sculpt obviously isn't a complete match for Jack Frost, especially it has a lot fuller lips, so I used a file to smooth out the line of the lips to make it less obvious, and also to file away the little dimple in his chin. I also tried to file away those stains, but it wouldn't work. So to cover that up and also give him a different skin tone, I'll be going in with acrylic paint. Firstly, I did a light shade to make sure I covered up the stains completely before going in with a more very pale skin tone. Once you have a basic color, you want to give it a seal with the Mr. Super Clear spray, then get out watercolor pencils and some chalk pastel for the repaint. I start by sketching on the eyes just to get the proportions, and in order to fit this face sculpt, I made his eyes a little bit smaller than it is for the actual character, giving him a slightly more adult and mature look. But if you want him to be, more exact, then make sure you make his eyes big enough. To get the skin tone more to where I wanted it, I used a lot of chalk pastel, firstly in very light tones and then building up more on the points of the face that would usually be darker around the cheeks and hollows of the eyes and such, both with different shades of skin tone, and then also with a bit of pink because he has like frostbite in his cheeks. When I couldn't build up the colors anymore, I gave it another spray of Mr. Super Clear and allowed it to dry so I could work on top. Unfortunately, because I used acrylic paint as the base and it's really hard not to get, brush strokes, when I used the pastel on top, it got a little bit splotchy, especially when I added darker tones, and it made it look a little bit dirty and not so neat. And that kind of annoyed me, but I couldn't really fix it because it was already sealed in. And yeah, in this kind of thing it'd be ideal to have an airbrush so you can get a smoother, finish with your paint, or just not have to paint the surface like I did, but it was stained and I wouldn't be able to cover it with pastels, so. I find male characters a little harder to work on than female, maybe just because I mainly do females because I prefer them, but also just because there are certain things like doing lips and eyelashes on males that just easily, get a bit too much and then make them look feminine. So I actually think it's kind of hard. To get good coverage on the eyes in fewer layers, I went in with acrylic paint, first adding the eye whites and then the iris. And from what I could tell from pictures, in his eyes it's supposed to look like very light snowflakes. So with the lighter blue I made small lines, kind of reminiscent of that. I always shade both the iris and the eye whites of the dolls that I make just because I think it adds nice dimension. Like with all my repaint, I like to build up colors in layers of the shading. So above his eyes, I had a mix of both a bit of red and grey and a bit of purple, just so you can build up to the tone you need it to be. For actual shading on his face, I went in with a warm grey chalk pastel, like the hollows of the cheeks and such. And then for actual highlights, I went in with pure white. As I mentioned before, I find the eyelashes a little hard on a male doll, so I was a little bit hesitant while I was doing them. For his freckles, I dabbed on pastel with a very small brush in order to get a softer look. In the final layer, I add just, the final details such as the highlights of the eyes. When you're happy with the look of the face, you want to give it the final seal. And after that was dry, I added glaze to the eyes. Now for the body, I painted the exposed areas with the same type of color as I did the face, before sealing that in with Mr. Super Clear and shading the same as I did the face. Here you can see the difference when the top hand is shaded and the bottom isn't. After sealing that in, we can move on to the clothes, and I used the kitchen film and tape method to make my pattern for the pants. I had to add a little extra around the knee to make sure the foot would fit through there, and I'll also be leaving the bottom part open when we sew them. I'll be using this brown canvas fabric and just cutting out 2 sets of my pattern pieces. So you want to sew a front and a back piece together by the side seam, not all the way down. Once you have that, you want to open it up and place it together with another set, and then sew down the curves of the front and the back. Finally, you want to sew the inner part of the pant legs. Then you can put it on the doll, sew the back shut, and also sew the little slit we had in the bottom of the pants. Then you want to wrap some string around his shins. Now for the hoodie, I made this very simple squared pattern that would fit around the top of the doll, and also made a piece for the sleeve that would fit in the length and the circumference. Get out some stretchy fabric and cut out the 2 main pieces. Place those 2 right sides together and sew the shoulder seam before adding on the sleeves. Then you want to add slightly shorter and folded over pieces to both the bottom of the main part of the shirt and also to the sleeves for cuffs, and it's just easier to do this now. I also did 2 lines of decorational stitches on the front to connect with the pockets before folding it right sides together and sewing down the sides and sleeves. And I forgot to add the pocket earlier, so I have to do it now. For the hood, I cut out these two scoop shapes, sewed them together and then sewed them along the neckline. After that, I added on 2 pieces of embroidery thread for the strings. And that's our basic hoodie done. Next up, I watered down some acrylic paint to paint on the frost. Do the same to the bottom of the pants. Then I popped the head back on and painted the scalp white, so it was ready for the hair. And the hair was acrylic yarn, which I brushed out and straightened, and I also brushed in a bit of grey chalk pastel just to make it a bit more dimensional. I glue on small sections of hair at a time, cutting them to the right length as I go, since I find that easier. And for each layer, I also brushed on a bit of grey acrylic paint just to the base of the hair again for dimension. Finally, we need to make his staff, and I did this by making a base of some wire, just twisting it together into the right shape. And then I used some Polymer clay, this time Sculpey, but it was very soft, and added this on top. And then I used a bit of brush tool just to add some texture. And because the clay was so soft, I pre-baked it a few times during the process, but this isn't necessary. Once you got the shape down, then you want to bake it completely. After cooling, we can paint. I started by painting it a very dark brown color, before then dry brushing white onto it to bring out the details and also look like the frost that was kind of spreading from the middle of the staff. And once I had the white down, I went in doing light blue lines, because it looks like there's almost power emerging from inside the staff. As a final detail, I glued on a bit of white glitter, just for extra bit of sparkle, and I also added this to the shirt, just because we know I have a glitter addiction, so oh well. And then he's done. So here's the finished doll. I really hope you guys enjoyed this project, and if you have any requests for winter or even Christmas, do leave them for me in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching, hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in a new one real soon. Bye!